morning, everybody, and welcome to the i3net interview series. I'm Bianca, the CEO of i3net, and I'm really excited this morning to be sitting down with a brand new partner of i3net, Finlease. So Mark O'Donoghue from Finlease. As the CEO and founding partner of Finlease, I was hoping that today you would be able to kick off our conversation by providing a little bit of background about yourself and also about Finlease before we get into the meaty questions.
Thanks, Bianca. I'll sort of give you the very quick summary. I started the business back in the late 80s, really very much as a one-man band organising equipment finance for the manufacturing sector. So I would work in the industrial areas of Sydney, Wollongong and Newcastle, providing finance for things as basic as injection moulding gear, engineering, tool making, etc. And then over the years, the business has grown. You know, today we have a national business with 18 branches around Australia, about 90 people within that business. It's been going for 30 odd years. We have lots of clients who have been with us for most of that journey. So we're a small business like our clients are. It's just that we're good at finance and they're good at either making things or moving things or drilling things. That's pretty well it. We're a small business. We do equipment finance and motor vehicle finance. We use a very broad base of lenders, but I feel we'll touch on that further on. But I think probably the most crucial thing for us is we're always about long-term relationships. It's never about the transaction. It's always about the 20-year relationship. We want to be there for the client for the long haul as they transition sometimes through their own multi-generational circumstances. And it's been a great journey. I really enjoy, and I get to hear some really good stories. So it's been a great business.
Fantastic. That's a great introduction and a very impressive history. So thank you so much for sharing that with me and the i3net members. One question that I wanted to kick off with was really about how the work you do differs from a traditional bank. And if you could share with me probably some of the benefits of why somebody would go with yourself versus a bank.
I think there's a multitude of things. In our prior sort of session chat, one of the biggest issues with banking relationships is this revolving door of bank managers. It's not uncommon for a business owner to have a new bank manager come through every 18 months to 24 months. And we've seen some real horror stories around that. We have a really deep-seated long-term team. You know, some of my team have been with me for 28 years of the 33 years that we've been in existence. And there's lots who are 5, 10, 15, 20. So a lot of our clients where we've been looking after them for 20 years or 15 years have been looked after by the same team member within Finlease. So the first thing is longevity of relationship. And we do everything to ensure that our client never wants to leave us because we do the right thing and we grow with them at the same time. We also understand the industries that we play in. So we're a small business just like our clients are. We're a family business and we're a member of the Family Business Association. And any capital intensive industry, whether it's earth moving, manufacturing, forestry, transport, have the same issues. They're trying to run a business with pretty significant investments in assets that they've got to basically drive a bottom line. So we're used to dealing in that space. It's not our first rodeo. After 30 years, we spend all of our time in equipment finance for small business. So apart from the fact that we have a really broad base of underwriters, so we will facilitate debt for our clients through about 15 to 20 different banks and finance companies. We will spread their debt if they're a larger client. And I mentioned to you earlier that one particular Cameo client, we started work for them 25 years ago when they had one machine. Today they have 130 machines. We have them spread over about 8 different financiers with pre-approved lines of credit. And we have those financiers compete against each other in terms of interest rate and terms and conditions. So we're essentially assisting the client to have a really broad spread of debt. So there is not a situation where the bank has complete control of them. We don't allow our funders to take GSAs or the old fixed inflating charges. So the equipment is the dedicated security. It's really important to get your debt structures right on that side. So just the way a client uses an insurance broker to get the right outcomes, a finance broker should be doing the same thing and acting in a way that the client says, wow, why would I ever leave this relationship? Hope that gives you some insight.
It does, and really it's about reducing that risk profile, as you said, and making sure that things are set up in the right way. So you're not adding that extra layer of stress on yourself in that process.
And I think, that's what we do all day. So our absolute discipline is equipment finance. So we know what good looks like.
Yes.
It's not our first rodeo when it comes to equipment finance. So when we are working on behalf of a client to negotiate the right sort of finance structure, sometimes we'll disagree with the funder. They'll be completely entitled to their opinion, but we know that there are other funders who will do it the way this needs to be done and at the right rate. So we're a fairly powerful advocate for our clients in ensuring they get the right outcomes.
Yeah, that's really important, that it's not just for you, it's not just a tick the box, push it through. It's actually drilling down, asking the questions and making sure that you get the best outcome for your clients. One thing, Mark, that I noticed when I was doing a bit of research on you before we welcomed Finlease to the i3net network, was some of your reviews that you have on your website. So there was, you guys have it was a 4.9, I think, from memory, out of 5-star rating, and wasn't there over 1,000 reviews on there? It was quite impressive on your website.
I appreciate the comment. It's funny. There's no such thing as a bad testimonial if you see a testimonial on a website. We very specifically went to the likes of Product Review and Google Review, because you can't change what they say.
No, you can't.
You can't delete it. You can't. So the only way that you can get a decent review is actually to do the job well. And it's been wonderful that we get a lot of inbound business just as a result of things like Product Review. But whether you're in finance or any other service industry or any industry for that matter, you just got to do the right thing. If you do the right thing, look after your clients, not only do they come back, but they tell everyone else.
Yes.
60% of our growth is word of mouth.
Wow.
And that's, we're growing at about 20% per annum compound. And it's we did 700 million in equipment finance last year for a very large client base, for about 7,000 to 7,500 transactions. So, there's only one way to do things, and that's the right way, because if you do it the right way, your clients always want to come back. They're really happy to work with you. They tell other people, and you build a sustainable business. And it's no different in any industry or any service.
Yeah, it does it. It's great. Mark, you have already touched on a few of these, but what I wanted to ask you was, if you could talk in detail about the different areas that you specialise in, because obviously i3net members are made up of the industrial audience from the Illawarra region, and probably if you could provide some examples, names removed of course, of some solutions you've recently provided to customers in the manufacturing base.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll sort of give you a variation of that. So probably what's really important as part of this communication is we are still in the final year of this magnificent tax incentive provided by the federal government as a function of COVID. This is the 100% write-off of assets that you acquire as long as they are installed and delivered before the 30th of June 2023. So we're talking about 10 months' time. Understanding that that's in play, and that's in play for new and used equipment for companies with a turnover up to 50 million and new only for companies with a turnover in excess of 50 but less than 5 billion, which I think covers our community reasonably handsomely on that side. So part of it is, number one, getting the right debt structure. So they should be using chattel mortgage. Getting the right structures in place that sometimes the company's really solid in their cash flow. They can afford to fully amortize that debt over 5 years, and that creates the least amount of interest payable, or 4 years. But sometimes if you're looking at $1 million asset, which has got a 15 to 20 year lifespan, you may want to do it essentially as a 10-year debt, where the first tranche is a 5-year term with, say, a 40% balloon at the end, like a residual. And then you roll that residual for another 4 or 5 years. So you've essentially got a 10-year fully amortizing debt, but in 2 tranches. And there's lots of things you can do. The finance industry is interesting at the moment because there is a plethora of product. So there are some products out there which are what they call a low doc product or a
Mm-hmm.
replacement product.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a very fast track to get competitive rates on some reasonable sort of gear. And then you've got full assessment. We often will put in pre-approved lines of credit. You know, we've had situations where we've had to assist in the importation of a machine. So the machine has been acquired from Spain or from an offshore location.
Mm-hmm.
It required a letter of credit. It required some progress payments. And we could do that under what they call lease and escrow documents, which ultimately convert to chattel mortgage
Mm-hmm.
without the client having any other of their securities impinged upon.
Wow.
Often when they go to the bank will say, well, we'll do it for you, but we're going to sideline a portion of your overdraft,
Yes.
or we own your factory under a mortgage, but we can do it simply on its own feet on that side. Sometimes we have to do a little bit of debt restructuring. So it's not uncommon that a client's looking to substantially upgrade their factory, and the cost of that new equipment, especially with this increasing interest rate market, is not insignificant. So the cost per month is going to be at a certain level, and there may be an opportunity to rewrite some of the other debt to reduce that level of debt, so you can have the combination of the two, the old and the new, being at a sustainable level. So sometimes it's about thinking about what is the right way up the mountain to do it, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's not rocket science, really. It's just thinking in a finance term. Does that sort of answer your question?
No, it does. And I think, you know, the thing that I do like about Finlease is it's not just a tick the box, push it through, and, you know, this one way is the only way. It's about actually digging down to find out what is the best path for the customer, for their outcome by reducing their stress. So I think that's probably one thing that has really stood out from my conversation with yourself and also the rest of the Finlease team about that service that you offer.
Yeah. One point that I'd like to bring up is, you know, often you'll see, you know, banking relationships are funny. You know, it's not uncommon that we've got a client who is in manufacturing or transport or earth moving, and let's say that, and I'm just going to pick a brand. It doesn't matter what brand it is, but let's say that they bank CBA and they do all their finance with CBA. And what happened was, as a kid, they had a CBA money box, and then they had their first CBA account, then they got their first car loan, and they might have been working for someone, and then they started a business, and it always stayed with CBA. And it could have been NAB or ANZ or Westpac. If they have all of their debt with the one bank, usually the bank has a GSA, this fixed and floating charge. That's the first thing. Usually the properties are tied up because there's home loans as well, and they have these cross-collateralization deeds that says everything, all debt is secured by all security.
Yes.
Now there's an ability. Yes, we do it, but they could easily do it themselves, or they could do it with another broking firm. But where you can, spread your equipment finance debt across a broader number of lenders, so you get some competition between them. To also, if they've got an experience, so if you're building a business and you can spread your debt over, say, 4 or 5 lenders, 3, 4, 5 years down the track, you've got history with that base, which is really broad, and they're going to be supportive going forward. If you've got everything with one bank, you're going to go up the line, and you're going to find committees are going to justify their decision on approval by putting additional bootstrapping on the transaction, which may mean more conditions. So it's good to have a broad base and then build from there. Does that make sense?
It really does.
And the biggest thing about you want your bank. You need to have a good relationship with your bank. So if you've got so much tied up with them and they have a change of bank manager, and for whatever reason you don't resonate with the new incoming manager, or you know they're less than ideal for your circumstance, it's really hard to change because it's so stitched into the fabric with everything that you've done. If you've got a more diverse spread of debt where everything's not reliant on the bank, you can actually hold them to task, because you know that you can leave them with a reasonably low level of pain. And when you can do that, they tend to behave a little better. Does that make sense?
It really does. It really does. I think that's a really good example, and it's something that people might think it's a bit painful at the time, you know, when they're going through, oh, look, I'll just go with this company because I've always gone with them, or with this bank because I've always gone down that path. I just need something now. But the pain that can cause you later about doing that little bit more work up front, and then that provides you with more power and more opportunities later. So I think that's a really good, we were going to talk about tips and facts later on, but I think that was a really good one. So thank you for bringing that up. One thing, just jumping back, that I wanted to ask you about, Mark, was as an expert in this space, was really for you to share with us just a little bit of the state of the industry at the moment. You know, is it the right time to seek finance? You've obviously shared some information about the interest rates that we're experiencing at the moment, but also the write-off. So I was just wondering if you had a bit of a summary that you could provide us with about the state of the industry at the moment from your perspective.
Look, I can. You know, we live in a polarized environment at the moment, and what I mean by that, there is no doubt, if you look at so many of the industries, whether you're playing in civil, landscaping, any of the trades, plumbing, sparkies, etc., there is so much going on. The infrastructure spend is just off the Richter, and by the way, it is not short term. The amount of things that are going on for 5 years plus is quite significant, and there's going to be shortages. We have a client who's regional New South Wales, who was moving an enormous amount of product into Sydney a few years ago, simply because Sydney didn't have the resources. So there is a lot of opportunity where people who are perhaps outliers to the Sydney Metro can actually very much play within that space, and Badgerys Creek is a great example of that, coming from where you guys are, down that area. So what I'd like to say is that certainly in so many sectors, it is incredibly busy. Now, there are challenges, but there are challenges. Labour is incredibly challenging at the moment. You know, we have a mobile crane operator in another state. They've just been able to secure 12 operators from overseas.
Wow.
And it's been like pulling teeth, but it's no good having the machines if you don't have the operators.
Exactly.
So labour's challenging in terms of supply. It's challenging in terms of cost on that base. Everything's going up in the building industry. The price of bricklayers, timber, steel has just gone through the roof. We have actually counselled clients. You know, this is a dangerous time if you're exposed to residential building industry. Just be mindful and watchful, because there's builders who are on fixed price contract. They can't conclude the project without being upside down on it, just because of the sheer cost of all the components that go through. So there are buoyancies within the industry. The interest rates have come up. Now we have to see it for what it really is. I've been doing this for 30 odd years. I've seen many ups and downs. You know, going back to the early 90s, we had interest rates in the 18 to 19% for equipment, which was incredible. It was home for home loans at that stage.
It was.
So we had this incredible time through. You know, COVID was just a weird time. Everyone was really concerned about it. For many industries, didn't turn out to be that cataclysmic. In fact, quite a few of them, if you're a regional transport operator, you've never been so busy.
Definitely.
But there were other industries that really got hurt. You know, anything to do with tourism and hoteliers, food, restaurants. You know, they really, unfortunately, got really hit hard. But the interest rates through that time were incredibly low. You know, when they dropped the RBA rate to 0.1%, it meant that you were able to fund significant items of plant, not much above 2 to 2.5%. Then it moved into sort of the threes, etc. Today, it's double that, and there's a lot of negative press. There's lots of blogs on our website that anyone can refer to that talk about this. with the doubling of the interest rates, and we've seen, we've had a raise again today, as you know, 0.5% RBA. We saw only a matter of 3 weeks ago that CBA put up their fixed rates on their home loans by 1.4%. So, they're talking 6% plus. But you need to see it in context. And what I mean by that is, if you've got an interest-only residential home loan for $1 million and you've got it fixed at 3%, it's going to cost you 30 grand a year to service it.
Yeah.
When it jumps to 6, as it will when they come out of their fixed rate contract, that 30 goes to 60. So it's a 100% increase in the monthly cost of the debt. If you're on a 30-year P&I, that affects about a 45% increase. So if you're paying, pick a number, 3 grand a month now, you're going to be paying close enough to 4.5 grand by the time that comes out. But for equipment finance, because you're amortizing the debt so quickly, on a 5-year nil structure, it'll actually increase. A doubling of interest rate will increase the actual physical payment by about 8%. So although the headline rate's a little scary, the actual reality is that $1,000 payment goes to $1,080. So we have to see it in that context. So sometimes I get off track. So we've talked about
no. It was I think exactly what you were saying. You were right on track. I think it's one of those things. The media are definitely talking very loudly about this and putting a lot of fear out there about it. And really, it's about going back, looking at the interest rate. But it's probably the typical level that it's at now is probably what it was around 2015. I'm guessing it was. They weren't long ago that they were at this level. Am I right?
You're on the button. You're absolutely.
Yeah.
What happens? You get used to things.
Yeah.
You get used to you get used to being able to negotiate a price for a new car with a dealer and get the interest rate reasonable. Today, if you want a new car, you can't negotiate on price. It's about arguing about when you can get it.
Totally.
And you're going to get the price. So I think you're spot on. So, and the thing about that is, it's the same playing field for everyone. So if you're in an industry where whether you're in the civil industry and you're competing against other civil operators, you've still got the same landscape. Yeah. You've all got the prevailing same sort of interest rates. So, a $500,000 machine is going to cost you X amount over a 5-year period. And it's the same no matter who you are, within reason. So it's a level playing field. Yeah. And I think probably from a business point of view, and we read an article about it the other day. I think we all have to adjust. If you're running a civil business or a landscaping business or a plumbing business, you've got to say, well, my prices have to be set based on, this is my new cost of labor, this is my new cost of debt, this is my new cost of machinery, because you have to pass it through. You do. No, that was great. And Mark, we've kind of weaved in a little bit. One of the questions I was going to ask you was if you could share some tips about equipment financing, specifically for members for our industrial audience. We have spoken quite a lot about that as we've gone through. I just didn't know if you wanted to add anything further that you would want to share with the network about the process. Okay, so probably a couple of things, and I'll talk both manufacturing as well as traditional heavy gear like civil related, etc.
Perfect.
So I suppose the first thing to say is you would be surprised at what you can get financed, whether that's software, racking, things that people think cannot be funded, they can. So just be mindful of that. You don't need to use your working capital in that area. You can actually get a debt structure on it. Insurance premium funding is a great example. Often a client will have a $300,000 insurance bill. They can actually pay that over an 11-month period at a very, very small cost. So it's all, cash is king. Cash is always king. You've got to, because we are going to see a slowing up. I think most people will see their debtors stretch a little. You're going to have to be on your debtors pretty hard to make sure that you get your cash flows in. It doesn't help you sitting in your ledger. It needs to be in your account, if that makes sense.
It does.
So I think don't be surprised at what can be financed at reasonable rates, especially when we go into civil and transport, etc. Used is just as easy to finance as new, including private sale. There's a few things that we need to do, or the provider needs to do, to make sure that you get clear title when you're buying a piece of gear from another company. So finance is easier than you think. And you made a comment before, it's actually a lot easier than people would think to actually go outside your bank to get the finance.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many fast track systems these days at very good rates. People shouldn't be fearful that they've had a bad experience 5 years ago and going to another major bank and they wanted them to jump through hoops and give them more paperwork than would fill the back of a skip. But that's not the case these days. So I think that part's fine. I'm just trying to think what other things. It does pay to shop around. You know, at the end of the day, it's never about the turnover. It's always about the leftover.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can reduce your operating costs within reason, you need to do it. And finance is just another, you know, you wouldn't pay a premium for your fuel or your oil or your tires. You shouldn't be paying it for finance. You should be getting the right rate, and it's worthwhile checking that. On the general banking thing, again, we wrote an article years ago. If you don't know whether your banking relationship is good or not, it's a really easy way to find out without a lot of work. Get 2 other banks to pitch for your business. They will do all the hard yards to deliver you the best offer they can, and you can benchmark that against what you currently have to either renegotiate with your existing bank to get a better outcome because they've had it a little too good for a little too long and they've just been called to account and they're prepared to play, or you simply migrate. But you don't need to go through massive amounts of work to do that. The banks will do the work for you because banks are very desirous of securing new relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not that good at maintaining existing ones. But
that's true.
Yeah, well, and I can't give them too much of a hard time because they're very good underwriters for us. They're very good at providing us with wholesale funds that we can service our clients with. So I've talked about used, new. I think I talked about be surprised about what you can finance. I've talked about the depreciation, which is really important. There is a window. If anyone is looking to increase the size of their capacity through equipment, etc., really think about this next 10-month window, because post the 1st of July this year coming, that 100% write-off is off the deck. And again, we've got plenty of editorial in our website about it. But if you can create a significant tax loss just by 100% writing off the equipment that you buy, not only can you carry that loss forward, you can actually carry it back. If you've paid tax in years 19, 20, or 21, and you have a loss, which is a tax loss, you can actually carry it back, and the tax department will give you a tax refund.
Wow.
Will physically put cash back into your system. So, you know, there's lots of things that company owners should consider, but I'm sure Luke will be engaged with your community, and that'll be lots of the things that they'll be talking about.
Yeah, definitely. No, Mark, that's really interesting, and it's good actually. You've gone on to my next question, was focusing locally. I wanted to chat about how does Finlease service the Illawarra and what that process is.
Yeah, so we have Luke based down in the Illawarra. So Luke is working solidly in that area, but a lot of our other team in Sydney also have quite a number of clients in the Illawarra, because they may be in specific industries like mobile crane or kitchen manufacturing and that sort of thing. And we've got a really big team. So we give Luke an enormous amount of support on the ground. He's got a number of team members that support him here. We travel everywhere. So sometimes Luke will see a particular situation for a client and he'll want to bring in one of our specialists who are really across that particular industry or that particular requirement. It might be importation of gear through letters of credit. It might be specifically to a disciplined industry where you do need to have that specialized knowledge. But he's going to be there. He's a young man. We're going to be building a business around for him through that area with a big support team. And that's the way we work. You know, I've been here for 35 years. I'm now getting a little long in the tooth or a little grey in the hair, but we've got this wonderful team coming through who absolutely understand the way we need to look after our clients. And what I'm, as an old fella, what I'm loving to see is that all these new generations of business owners, because there's lots of business owners who are my age who are now passing on to their sons and their daughters. And we've got all these young team members who are really good at engaging because they're incredibly tech savvy. They talk differently to an old fella like me in terms of the way they communicate, etc. So we've got a lot of support on the ground in the Illawarra. That's not an issue.
Fantastic. No, that's great. And we'll make sure that we pop Luke's contact details at the footnotes of our video as well, so people know exactly how to reach out to him. While we wrap up, my last question was just, is there anything exciting coming up from Finlease or any other news or information that you'd like to share with the i3net network before we wrap up?
Look, I think exciting. I did touch on the fact that there is an enormous amount going on. So the landscape for so many industries and so many businesses in terms of opportunity is mind-bending. It is very significant. The problem is being able to resource it. That's the $1 million question. Bill Evans, who's the economist for Westpac, indicated about 2 months ago that the construction of new homes was 130% of capacity. In other words, what has already been sold and contracted is 30% greater than the capacity to be able to do it. So now there are some issues in terms of the cost of raw material, as we spoke about, with timber and steel and bricks, etc., and the labour. But it's an environment going forward where it's not lacking in opportunity.
Yeah.
We just need to have the necessary resources to be able to execute. So we need more people coming into the country, more people being employed within the local system, having the gear, and having reasonable access. And I don't want to go too long on it. If there is a resolution in Ukraine, we will see a reduction in the cost of certain materials and an increase in supply.
Yeah.
If we see China come out of their COVID-enforced lockdown, we will see flow of componentry and product, because that's really constraining us at the moment. So I suppose it's exciting from the point of view there's lots to do and it's going to happen. The challenge is how long before we can really get onto it with all the resources that we need on that side. And there's some challenges along the way. I spoke briefly about the residential building industry. 2 builders went into receivership in the last couple of days in Queensland. The recent stats are saying that there is a clear indication there's going to be a lot more insolvencies coming forward on that basis. So for all of your clients, things that they should be mindful of is they should be very watchful of their debtors. They should have some assistance around how they perfect their supply agreements, because if you can actually register your supply agreement on a PPSR, you become a secured creditor. That actually protects you against preferential payment clawback, which is a really nasty thing that happens in administration. So you're not only owed money by a client, but you've got an administrator trying to get money back from you. Because they're purporting that you got money out of sequence with normal creditors. So, debtor control, PPSR control, creditor watch style facilities are really important. So you've just got to be mindful of who you're supplying to, and you keep the supply chain tight. Otherwise, you're going to have some bad debt. There is a chance that a number of people will put themselves into voluntary administration just to either renegotiate a fixed price contract or to protect themselves, because you can't knowingly trade in an insolvent position. Otherwise, you lose the protection of a proprietary limited company, and they can come through the gate straight to the directors on that. So I think we've got excitement and opportunity, but we've also got a bit of a choppy sea. So it's a time for being really watchful. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that's a really great way of putting it, actually. So yeah, I think that was great, Mark. Thank you. Well, look, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. I've learnt quite a bit, and look, I think I'm really encouraged by our conversation and the previous conversations that I've had with the Finlease team about the level of care that you provide to your customers, the fact that you don't just tick the box, that you want to work with them to deliver a solution that's exactly right for them. And before you said our finance is simple, and I think it's not. I think the work that you do is actually, there's an expertise behind it, and there's a care and there's a dedication that not all companies do. So I'm personally really excited about welcoming you to the i3net network, because I think you guys will be a really valuable partner to share your expertise with the network. So welcome to the network.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, that will wrap up our interview. I'll make sure that I definitely pop the contact details in the footnote. So thank you again for joining me this morning.
A pleasure. And I'm going to be making sure that I actually attend quite a number of your events with Luke, so I can meet some of your members.
Fantastic, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.